At 00 hours, the northern Persian Gulf is a pitch-black void of churning water and oppressive heat. 400 miles northwest of the Strait of Hormuz, a flotilla of Mark V special operations craft carves a violent path through the darkness. There is no moonlight, only the suffocating, sweltering 80-degree blanket of mid-March humidity that makes the air feel thick enough to drown in. The twin MTU diesel engines of the lead 82-foot boat emit a continuous deafening roar, vibrating through the 57 tons of monohull aluminum and directly into the bones of the United States Navy SEALs and Army Green Berets strapped into the shock-absorbing seats. The Shamal winds are howling down from the north, whipping the sea into aggressive, white-capped swells. Every few seconds, the heavy assault craft launches off a wave crest, hanging weightless in the dark spray before slamming back into the trough with a concussive, bone-rattling thud. Salty sea spray washes over the gunnels, mixing with the raw, pungent smell of unburned diesel exhaust and the sweat pooling beneath the operator's heavy body armor. The tension on the approach is agonizing. They are running completely dark, penetrating the outermost layers of the most concentrated anti-access bubble in the Middle East. The operators stare into the black expanse, acutely aware of the invisible threats lurking above and below. The deep water column surrounding them is seeded with thousands of Iranian naval mines. Somewhere in the murky depths, Maham II ground influence mines sit buried in the silt, packing 350 kilograms of high explosives, waiting for a magnetic anomaly or an acoustic spike to trigger a catastrophic detonation. Tethered contact mines float blindly in the transit lanes. Above them, the mainland coast is bristling with subterranean launch silos housing Khalid Far's anti-ship ballistic missiles, weapons designed to drop from the stratosphere at extreme velocities and snap the spine of a supercarrier. It is this exact layered threat matrix that forced the amphibious assault ships to remain safely over the horizon, leaving the seizure of Kharg Island entirely to the operators plunging through the dark. By 01:30, the throttle cuts. The deafening roar of the engines dies down to a low, throaty idle. The hull of the lead craft breaches the surf line at the base of the island's southern extremity. There is no beach to assault, only the imposing sheer face of a jagged limestone cliff rising 270 feet straight up into the night sky. The SEALs and Green Berets unclip from their harnesses and slip over the side into the tepid, waist-deep saltwater. They move in absolute disciplined silence. The only sounds are the rhythmic, hollow slapping of the Gulf waves against the coral rock and the ragged, controlled breathing of the men as they wade toward the vertical wall. They begin the grueling ascent. The Green Berets, burdened by nearly 100 pounds of ammunition, explosives, and suppression gear, utilize specialized tactical climbing systems to conquer the rock face. They drive pitons into the porous limestone, threading static ropes through silent pulleys. The tactile reality of the climb is pure, physical punishment. The ancient coral rock is abrasive and razor-sharp. It slices through tactical gloves, abrading knuckles to the bone with every desperate handhold. Muscles burn and lungs scream for oxygen in the thick, wet air. The smell of the ocean gives way to the scent of damp earth and the faint, bitter tang of sulfur bleeding from the island's interior. As the maritime elements suffer on the cliffs, the invasion from the stratosphere begins. At 0200 hours, 35,000 feet above the Gulf, the cargo ramp of a C-17 Globemaster lowers into the freezing void. The temperature outside the aircraft is 40 degrees below zero. The rushing wind screams through the pressurized cabin. A team of Army airborne operators stands at the edge of the ramp, staring down into an endless abyss. On a synchronized green light, they step out into the black. The physical shock of the high-altitude, low-opening freefall is instantaneous. They reach terminal velocity in seconds, plummeting toward the Earth at over 120 miles per hour. The paralyzing cold bites through their jumpsuits, while the rushing wind deafens them, vibrating their oxygen masks violently against their faces. They are falling straight through the electronic webs of Iranian Tor M1 and S-300 air defense batteries, but their radar cross-section is too small and their descent too rapid for the automated systems to lock on. They watch the glowing dials of their wrist altimeters spin wildly as the atmospheric density thickens and the freezing air rapidly turns to sweltering heat. At exactly 800 feet above the island, they pull. The parachute canopies deploy with a violent, spine-jarring deceleration that snaps their heads back. The deafening roar of the wind is instantly replaced by a sudden, eerie silence. They drift down through the dark, steering their canopies with surgical precision toward the northeastern edge of the island. The black ribbon of runway 1331 at Kharg Airport rushes up to meet them. Boots hit the paved asphalt of the 7,657-foot runway. They instantly collapse their chutes, shedding 75 pounds of nylon and rigging in seconds, raising their suppressed weapons and melting into the shadows to secure the airfield perimeter. Simultaneously, at 0215, the Green Berets and SEALs crest the southern ridge of the limestone cliffs. They pull themselves over the jagged lip of the rock, their chests heaving, blood mixing with the sweat on their hands. They reach up to their helmets and flip down their ground panoramic night vision goggles. The pitch-black world instantly erupts into a crisp, 97-degree field of glowing green phosphor. The panoramic view eliminates the tunnel vision of older optics, allowing them to take in the sprawling, terrifying geometry of Kharg Island. They move inland, navigating through the treacherous, uneven rubble of the mid-March airstrikes. Shattered concrete, pulverized limestone, and twisted rebar litter the ground, where Iranian early warning radar sites and air defense complexes were obliterated just weeks prior. The smell of pulverized concrete and charred earth mixes sickeningly with the overpowering, suffocating stench of raw, unrefined crude oil. This is the beating heart of Iran's oil empire. Ahead of them lies the massive storage tank farm. 31 million barrels of heavy crude sit inside a labyrinth of 41 colossal steel tanks. The operators weave through this industrial maze, stepping over containment berms and ducking under massive 56-inch submarine pipelines that thrum with gravity-fed petroleum. The ambient heat radiating from the miles of sun-baked steel makes the air feel thick and unbreathable. By 0300 hours, the stealth phase begins to fracture. The SEAL elements push toward the western seaboard, converging on the Sea Island terminal. This massive loading facility extends nearly a mile into the deep water, capable of pumping 300,000 tons of crude into ultra-large supertankers. The SEALs navigate miles of elevated steel catwalks. The gratings beneath their boots are slick with decades of oily residue, making every step treacherous. They move past the towering hydraulic Chiksan loading arms that stand like mechanical giants in the glowing green haze of their night vision. The friction of combat ignites without warning. An Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps patrol, emerging from the shadows of a pump station, spots the lead SEAL element. The kinetic action explodes. Suppressed carbines cough rapidly in the dark, the sharp, rhythmic cracking sound echoing off the massive steel-holding tanks. The metallic clatter of spent brass casings raining down on the steel gratings rings out like shattered glass. The chaotic, panicked shouts of the defenders are cut short by the surgical precision of American return fire. The close-quarters battle is a nightmare of sensory overload. Muzzle flashes momentarily white out the operators' panoramic night vision, leaving blooming halos in their fields of view. The air instantly fills with the sharp, pungent odor of cordite, mixing with the ever-present, suffocating reek of petroleum. Across the island, the tension escalates minute by minute. The Green Berets assault a hardened command bunker near the naval hovercraft base. A breached door vaporizes in a shockwave of localized overpressure, sending a cloud of blinding dust and pulverized concrete into the humid air. The operators flood the breach, their carbines tracking smoothly across the room, eliminating threats in the chaotic, choking smoke. The sound of violence is everywhere now, a localized symphony of destruction tearing through the quiet of the Persian Gulf. They systematically neutralize the remaining sentries, placing explosive charges on key manifold junctions and communication arrays to blind the island's central command and ensure the terminals can be disabled instantly if a counterattack materializes from the mainland. At 0415, the intense, localized firefights begin to subside into sporadic, isolated pops of gunfire. The coordinated violence has done its job. The remaining air defense networks are fully blinded. The hovercraft base is neutralized and burning. and the control rooms of the massive oil loading terminals are firmly in American hands. The operators are exhausted, their bodies battered from the climb, the jump, and the adrenaline dump of close-quarters combat. They are soaked to the bone in a miserable, sticky mixture of seawater, sweat, and petroleum residue. They move methodically into defensive postures, barricading choke points and setting interlocking fields of fire along the catwalks and runway approaches. By 0520, the sky to the east over the Iranian mainland begins to lighten. The absolute darkness gives way to a bruised, dusty purple, slowly shifting into streaks of vibrant orange. The vast, sprawling infrastructure of Kharg Island emerges from the shadows. The sheer scale of the objective becomes visible in the pale morning light. The 41 massive storage tanks, the endless miles of pipelines, the towering loading arms of the Sea Island terminal, and the shattered concrete of the radar sites are all fully illuminated as the sun begins to bleed over the horizon. The Shamal winds continue to whip across the water, but the island itself is eerily quiet, save for the low mechanical hum of the remaining generators and the distant rhythmic crash of the Gulf waves against the limestone cliffs. The Forbidden Island, the absolute economic center of gravity for the Iranian Empire, has been ripped from their control. The objective is secure,